still used method that absolutely is just mind-boggling to me why people do it. And the reason that they do it is not based in any kind of science whatsoever. It's not how plants work. And there have actually been studies to prove this. And so I was getting into a conversation online with somebody the other day. He grows the best weed in the world and all this kind of stuff. And he said he doesn't know anybody that doesn't flush. That's not anything. I don't care about your feelings when it comes to these things, okay? That there are two main studies that have actually shown that what you think you're doing when you're flushing a plant. And what do I mean by flushing a plant, guys? Flushing a plant is what I am referring to. There's two different times when people flush, okay? If you have a salt buildup because you're using bottled newts and you need to correct a rhizosphere pH issue, flushing is totally okay. You're going to want to flush with 3 times the volume of water of whatever pot you're using. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the long-standing myth of using water to clear out nutrients from the soil to remove them from the plant tissue. Guys, that's not how plants work. That's just not a thing. It's not a thing that happens, okay? That the plant cells are, that the endocycle, like Michael Wildschultz said, this is endocycle flushing of giving your plants 2 weeks of only water or whatever it is. Guys, all you're doing is flushing. When you're flushing your plant like that, all you're doing is starving your plant at the most critical time. And that all of these kind of white ash myths that are out there, I don't know if anybody's ever heard that if you don't flush, that a white ash will produce the best, clearest, clippest. Guys, that's all crap. It's all a bunch of Broscience. It's a bunch of hippies that were in the back of the 70s in their van going, damn, man, this one's real good, man. Well, I didn't ran out of newts, man, and so, man, check it out, man. Well, maybe because we didn't feed it the nutrients because the newts are coming in the tissue and the buds, man, and that's why it's good. Man, it doesn't work like that, folks. And so when you're doing things like this that are just that some of them have, logical and what I refer to in anecdotal. These are anecdotal things at best. Anecdotal observations of I did this, it came out like this, so it must be that thing. Well, plants don't really work like that, and there's such a variety and such a crazy amount of things that influence how the plant actually grows, and on top of that, how the plant actually, after it's even grown, that all of these kind of flushing things are mostly attributed to improper drying techniques and improper curing techniques. If you've got water content that's too high in your bud and you try to light it on fire, it's going to give you a gray ash at the end. It's not going to taste right. It's going to taste harsh. Okay, drying is very important. And so somewhere along the line, somebody decided that, hey, that they're pouring water on your plant, but for the, pouring water on your plant at the end of the life cycle does something to it. I have 2 verifiable actual studies that prove this is not a thing. That even though you're giving your plant, you're not removing it from the bud tissue. Okay? And so there isn't any actual science. There's literally one dude on freaking YouTube that I've seen, and I've asked this question hundreds of times. Okay? Hundreds and hundreds of times. That, hey, where is the science saying that flushing does what you folks think it does? Not you folks specifically. You guys are my folks. You guys are my people. Folks in general, okay? Is that somehow that taking water and putting it through your rhizosphere is going to remove the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in your plant tissue is just not a thing. And so, like I said, there's 2 scientific studies that I have. There's a guy in England that did it, and then another nutrient company that actually based, and everybody says, well, they're a nutrient company. But that nutrient company used some a university student's study to base theirs off of. And so this is not just what, it's just not what it's just not how plant works. It's just not how they work. And so everybody's seen their plants bulk up towards the end of flowering. At the very end, you'll see them gain significant amounts of weight, okay? And so it's counterintuitive to try to remove what's feeding them and causing that cellular division inside that plant and causing them to gain weight. Because everybody wants, more yield, okay? And so, these are things that, like I said, these are, what is Broscience? Broscience is going to be something like this, okay? Like, hey, hanging my plant upside down. Now, guys, I've got Literally 50 plants hanging upside down right now. But the reason people started doing it like that is because they thought that the THC would magically, that top bud at the very bottom, that gravity would somehow pull the THC, and it would be at the end, at the very, very end of the bud, at the top, because of gravity. Again, that's not how the plants work. This is not a thing. They're cut down, and they're in the, the cannabinoid contents in the trichome head, and they're all stuck where they are. But this is just kind of a thing that where we didn't have science, and they didn't have science and things, and able to, put these kind of hypotheses through the scientific method. That's the rigors of the scientific method, folks. It can't be refuted, it can't be denied. Okay, and so when you've got somebody that actually takes the time to get a control group, to get variables, to test those variables, and then run it through the scientific method in a formula, and actually formulate a test for it, and then produce a study based on that, okay, that's going to be the thing that we have to use. And until there's other science to say otherwise, flushing don't do nothing, drilling a hole in the middle of your plant that the stalk doesn't stress the phylum out or the xylem to make it. The 48 hours of darkness, guys, stop doing that to your plants. This is not, you don't magically make trichomes at the end of the... Trichomes take anywhere from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks to fully develop. You're not going to do anything at all to a trichome in 48 hours. I don't care if you give it dark. The only thing you can do is you can fry it. But when you give these plants, whenever you give these kind of conditions, what happens when you put a plant into darkness? Okay? You actually are inviting mold because it raises the humidity. All right, these are things that that are just kind of basic botany and basic science things, guys. Is that and how some of them got so predominant is still kind of baffling to me. And so I definitely I got some of them written down. I kind of went over them, flushing them. I saw my friend Jordan, a lot of you guys on the roots, 48 hours to simulate winter, like. Man, yes, these are things that happen in nature, but you're not doing them in 48 hours. It's not a thing that's going to actually happen. You know what I mean? One thing that I will say that and again, this is based on a scientific study, and it was done by Grove Bags, and I looked in depth into the actual study that they did when they were doing their Terp Black technology, and they were doing a study about it was inadvertently about 24 hours of darkness or 48 hours of darkness. Now, we do know that terpenes are degraded with light heavily, okay? And so there is some potential theoretical and actual science behind giving a plant a period of darkness before you harvest it for the terpene preservation. Not for magically producing trichomes in a day, guys. All right? Not a thing. But in order to preserve those terpenes, cutting your lights off a few hours, doing it in darkness, there is some science back to that, and it could be a thing, okay? And so again, we need more data on it, but there's some preliminary things that have suggested and hinted that yes, that could be a benefit. Again, not for 48 hours to try to produce magic trichomes, but in order to try to preserve those terpenes. That's again the name of the game when you're drying and curing cannabis is that. You've got oh hey, that reminds me, Ed, before I forget, Ed Ola's new